Ladies and gentlemen, there are seminal events in your lifetime that you mark before and after going to school, graduating. This event is going to be one of them. You will mark your life in two parts: before this Coaches and Directors Summit 2023 session about academic integration, and everything after. And I would bet, on the whole, on the balance, if you have 3 years left to live, it doesn't matter. This will be the better part of your life. Joining me are two of my absolute favorite people, Chris Postell and Mike Aguilar. Now, I'm not going to tell you too much about them that you don't already know yet, but if you listen closely, I'll drop in 5 facts about each one you didn't even know were out there and may not even be true. Let's throw to the guys right now. Chris, Mike, is that your favorite
thank you
intro
so
of all
much
time? Only one answer will
for
do.
such a warm welcome. Thank you very much. And to all of our lovely viewers, welcome to the second day
To
of the
both of our
Coaches and
viewers,
Directors
yes.
Summit presented by EsportsU. This is the second year of our annual summit in which we present and dive into topics that are important to you, coaches and directors, for the betterment of our community and the shared education and empowerment of all. Joining me today is Mr. Doc Haskell and Mike Aguilar, directors of esports at Boise State and University of Oklahoma. Please take a couple seconds to introduce the two of yourselves, starting with Mike.
Yeah,
I'm Mike Aguilar. I'm in.
Oh my
I'm
lord!
sorry.
I was debating on doing a blur screen with a Boise State Bronco in the back. Now I'm mad I didn't do it. But yeah, Mike Aguilar, Moog. I'm the director of esports and co-curricular innovation within the Division of Student Affairs at OU. I've been working on this at OU since the fall of 2016. And now resemble one of the largest single topic organizations on campus at over 3,400 members and over 190 students in development.
And what I'll add to that he did not include in that is Oklahoma was one of the first universities to really chase, because of him, esports. But big institutions, big battleships turn slowly. I've known this man for 7 years and have got to witness his fight to where they are now. And I don't think it would have survived at such a big university without someone like him. So let me just say, all those things behind the comma after his name are well earned.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
And Doc, let's hear about you as well, sir.
I just, my job is I get gamers in chairs to compete.
All right. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, you have this finely qualified panel to talk today about our topic, academic integration. How is it happening on campuses in regards to esports? Let's dive into our first series of questions. And to start off our discussion, I want to reference data because data is king in how we choose to discuss and how we are empowered and educated on topics. Data shows that universities are integrating esports into their academic pipelines with increased frequency, ranging from certificate programs all the way up through baccalaureate and even master's programs. To this end, there are many different possibilities of how schools are integrating. I want to ask two of you, before we talk about your prospective schools, what do you see when you survey the country and look around yourselves? What do you see as most common, and what do you see as most recent?
I'll I'll go ahead and start this. I think the certificate becomes the kind of foundation that we see as a starting point for a lot of academic endeavors in regards to how do we take what we already do as a university and bring esports in a topic that we know students are interested in. And I think that that's both good and bad. And I'll definitely talk about why when we talk about how I'm looking at approaching OU's development more and more. But the certificate becomes that cliche kind of low-hanging fruit opportunity in regards to how do we get something that has an academic opportunity accreditation. And that accreditation component is the part that's the most ridiculed against all of our collegiate peers because as far as we're concerned, there aren't very many professors or doctorates or subject matter experts within the walls of academia to build, the curriculum, structured program. So that said, on the positive side, the intention is that the first is always the hardest. The people that are starting to do this for the first time or have done it for the first time will always have the most ridicule because it's never been done before. And so you're providing structure, normalization, and a common vernacular of doing these things is going to have some cultural pains and growths. But past that, we are absolutely seeing, minors, majors, undergrads, master's programs even. And pretty soon, I'm pretty sure we'll start seeing a few doctorate, at least tie-ins in regards to curricular alignment of pre-existing structures. But all of it, I think, is movement forward. It's always, my always hang up with those things is about the intentionality of it, the marketing of it, and does it actually have the substance based on the faculty that are either adjunct or hired in to teach it.
Yeah, I think that would be a good segue for you, Doc.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, here's what I'll say is, and let me just give you a peek behind the curtain at all institutions, right? All efforts have to be funded by something. They can be funded by external dollars, by appropriated dollars, which is, hey, we're going to give this much every year for this thing because we think it's important. Most rec centers are largely funded on, a slice of the student tuition pie, but everybody else has got to do their work to bring that money in, and those are credit hour returns, basically the amount of money that a department or a unit gets to from each of the credits offered, right? So that's one of the reasons we're seeing a lot of these courses be developed. They believe in esports, but they got to find a way to pay for them. So let's create, as Moog talked about, a certificate. Mostly the way that it depends on the type of university, but big public institutions like ours, honestly, even private institutions, they have to start by getting curriculum by a board or a panel or a collection of individuals. They have to make sense to their own department. And you can start by offering special topics courses, and then you can bundle a few of those special topics courses into a loosely approved certificate. But to get a minor or a major, it has to go all the way to the Board of Education, who has to determine that it has value. So almost all of these certificates, while you may think, oh, golly, why is, Sisters of the Poor University offering a certificate in esports? They just started a team last year and they've never won a game, and their person is a worn out rec person who's becoming this other thing, or, is becoming the esports, they don't know anything. That is the path. That is the path that most universities have to take to get curriculum in there and to get money to flow back in. But here's what I would argue is that of those who are sitting here and many of you who are watching, your path into esports expertise is not a straight one. I have a music degree and then an educational technology master's and then a doctorate that kind of was starting to loosely be connected with gaming before I'm here. My path is all over the place. Mike's path is not a straight shot into esports, but if you look on the periphery, you see a lot of that stuff. So here's what I would say. What I'm seeing is people developing curriculum the way that they have to develop curriculum on their campus so that they can keep, financial efforts built, structured so that they can keep doing what they want to do. It's not because all of these places have expertise, but that's the way it looks, right? It's like, how can they? Because they have to. That's the way they have to do it.
Right.
It doesn't mean that they won't develop that expertise, but that's the way that universities work, and that's the way that money flows within the universities, unless you've got just a big old, Uncle Moneybags who's just going to come and drop stuff on you. Hopefully I took us way off topic.
Vantage points. Oh no, you hit it perfectly, because I think it's really important to establish a baseline of when people see one thing, other people see another. And I think that perspective is really important in this conversation more than anything, because this is a polarizing conversation within academic integration. And so at this point, I want to actually go to you, Doc, and I want to ask you, let's get a little granular for a second. What presence at Boise State, which is a Division I public institution, what presence does esports have at Boise State as far as it goes academically? And how does this affect your students? And how does this affect your administration?
So our structure is a little bit unique, says every director everywhere, right? We're a little different. No, everybody's a little different. We are a competitive esports program nestled in the warm bosom of a academic college. And what that means is that our competitive team is part of the College of Innovation and Design. There's a reasonable chance within the next year we will be acquired by athletics and become part of the athletics program, but we're not there yet. We follow all of their other rules. We, like football and basketball, do not offer courses. We're a platform that other units and colleges and departments can build coursework on and around, and we're the lab for that. So if you can imagine it this way, if you're a football team, you don't offer courses um, in athletic training, but you allow the athletic training department full access and volunteer time in your program. We do that with communications, we do that with education, we do that with a number of other budding ones, but we don't offer the courses ourselves. We are simply the platform, the classroom, if you will, that other departments can offer. Did that answer your question, Chris?
It did a
You're
little
still
bit.
stuck
I think
on
I
nestled
understood
in the
more.
bosom, aren't you? Yeah.
I not in the slightest. I understand now how your departments are interfacing with your program, but from a student perspective, what do the students see?
So the
How do the
students
students see
treat it like,
academics
yeah, the
within your
students
program?
treat it treat the competitive effort like any other athletic team, and are held to high, not crippling, I don't care what you read on Twitter, but high academic standards, so that they can travel and maintain their scholarships and things like that. We have an associate or assistant dean in our college who manages the the standard grade checkups, and I'm always interfacing with students to do that, but they don't take courses from us for anything.
Gotcha. Understood. Mike, I'm going to turn over to you now. And I know that you're in building phase right now at the moment, but you're building at the speed of light as far as it goes in the world of higher education. So, in terms of academics at the University of Oklahoma, what presence does esports have? And same question to you that I gave to Doc. How does this or will affect the students, and how does this or will affect different academic departments?
So I actually like Doc's intro on this in regards to building a platform for departments to integrate in. And in fact, I'm now stealing something from you, Doc, for the first time. So this,
Not for the first time.
yeah, what? But the point is that like when we talked or an approach curriculum in the context of, do we want to offer the traditional kind of canon in regards to undergrad, minors, majors, masters, and so forth, then moving that needle forward is basically an act of Congress. Board of Regents approval, State Board of Education approvals. It is a very long, drawn-out process. So the strategy from the very beginning was to focus on path to industry by creating an opportunity where students can treat the OU esports program as their lab for those classes. So if you're in business, so if you're in marketing, international business, well, then you're going to be in our community pillar and our leadership pillars. If you're going to be in creative media production, journalism, professional writing, sports broadcasting, anything like that, you're in our production pillars or our streaming entertainment pillars. If you are interested in competition, at least from the context of structure and development, that's also in the College of Business, Sports Team Management, Sports Business degrees. So in that same vein, what we're doing is 90, I wouldn't say 90, but a big chunk, more than 50% of the curriculum that they're learning, the ethics standards, the due processes, the understandings of compliance, the need for governance and policy, understanding how to read analytics and fabricating a narrative based on reporting is true in the curriculum as is. It does not need any renovation. You could, for all intents and purposes, at least slap esports in front of some of those classes, but you don't necessarily have to, aka sidestep that entire act of Congress process. So when students come for tours and they come for kind of understanding, well, especially the parental units where they're like, well, how does this plug into what he wants to do? Well, that's obviously that's one of the kind of the director's kind of magic in regards to finding those connective tissue and sinew of what they're doing on a daily basis, providing structure, and then end product of what that student young adult will become. And that can range from anything from aerospace engineer and the soft skills development, the more baseline kind of core benefits of being involved in a development with camaraderie and synergistic intention. But then on the other side, those that actually have degree alignments that already are components of what we do in esports from an operational standpoint or an execution component, those degrees are already pretty powerful as is, with the benefit of not being esports branded and siloing them into an industry that is going to struggle to hire anybody with an esports degree. at least currently. That's still kind of a struggle for a lot of it, and especially after what we've seen in the pro sector, in regards to the reduction of, obviously workforce and layoffs and things like this across the board. That component from higher education is we have a very fine line to walk in that regard. If we're pitching esports curriculum, and part of the university is that you're subscribing to this style or this type of instruction, the hope would be that you can work in that space versus using the current, tested true degrees as is, giving them a program to learn what use what they're learning in the classroom outside of it with us, and then they're not siloed on their resume because it's still a degree in business or international business or marketing or retail chain management, and they can list those experiences whether they're a scholarship student, a volunteer, or an actual workforce.
So what I'm hearing, and just to translate that back to the viewers, because I heard a lot of vocab words of the day in that.
As you will with
you are
Mr. Aguilar.
With both of you seasoned scholars. What you are saying is that you are not building new curriculum for esports, intentionally bringing that portion of the world to the classroom. You are taking existing coursework and existing curriculum that is so relevant to the application of esports that you could change the name and slap the esports on the title and it would still be the same, for lack of a better term. That's where you're going. Is where you're choosing to
That's
start.
really where I'm at. Now, the future will be the creation of esports degree lines when the industry is strong enough to support the value of that nomenclature on a resume or a certificate. But it's not from an analytical perspective. I mean, yes, there are niches that will hire people with an esports degree, but just like in almost any new segment and kind of the reversion of a lot of segments, it's always the experience that sells you. The degrees and those give you the concepts and philosophy of things to try and attempt and understand the boundaries or scopes of what to do. But it's the application of experience that fortifies it into something that's employable. And so that is kind of the intention that I've had in saying that I don't want somebody at OU, at least not in the current renaissance of time across the sector, probably for my forecast at OU, 3 to 5 years for sure, to graduate from OU with a degree in esports and then can't find work. And then because of the stifling and the stigma of having an esports degree on a resume. But if they have a degree from the College of Business that has an emphasis in esports, then they can drop the emphasis and it's still a true canon esports business or a business degree. That's the future of actual esports curriculum at OU will come, but right now it doesn't make sense yet.
That makes sense. Thank you for that. Doc, I'm going to pivot to you real quick, because you are in process in these relationships and structure that you've built. Can you give a little more clarity to our viewers on how you decided where to start? How did you, in other words, how did you advise your institution? And were you or are you a central party in how the conversations of academic integration played out? Because that's an important distinction to make. Are you the person in the room?
You're building this on assumptions of forethought and organization, which I would argue have never really been present. Here's the truth is, let me boil it down. We're a TV studio with an esports team, right? Our primary product is TV. When on the competitive side, tiers. We deliver a lot of. No, I'm just kidding. But that's really what we are. And we came to this place because we're on a Division I football campus. We knew that we'd get that 1 or 2 feel good, 2-minute stories on a couple of the news channels annually, but nobody would tell our story. We'd never make the front page of the university unless there was some crazy thing. We had to be our own media organization. So we started spinning up streaming. I didn't know anything about that. I became an obsessive student about that. That is the common thread in all the things in my life. Is if I get obsessive about it, I can decode it enough to make it look like it's supposed to look, I would think. And that's even on the academic side. My dissertation is the product of being obsessive about what are smart people do, what do smart people write about, that kind of stuff. So for us, building out I would say the most impactful professional or learning environment in our space was a product of we need to be able to tell a better story about what we're doing, or we're just going to get wiped off the map by robotics or drone racing or something else. We have to really manage that. And because of that, we've been obsessive students of it. We watch everything that everybody does. You know, there's a Evo was last week. We're still dissecting what went on in those broadcasts that was unique and cool. And could we mimic some of that? And how did they do that trick? Was that all unreal, or did they do? Was it cooked video? What was it? Some of those kinds of things. So here's my semi answer to your question, which is we decided to move in this direction because it was self-serving for us, and it's self-serving on every campus, or self-preservation more like, but it has grown into something that's been really valuable. Many of the folks in the chat, and you both know Alex Moore, my longtime assistant, was a player, has a business degree. We hired as an assistant, then became a coach. He got sniped by Riot. He's a broadcast engineer with Riot now. And if you'd said, well, that doesn't seem like a very good business degree, the truth is the degree doesn't matter as long as you have what the company or organization feels is critical, plus relevant experience, right? The degree, with exceptions of teaching and medical and those that actually produce a credential, the degrees simply help prepare you for experiences that no one can prepare you for.
Absolutely.
There you go. That's really confusing.
Thank you for,
yeah. There you go.
Not at all. Made complete sense. Mike, I'm going to toss this portion of the question to you because I think this will be very insightful for those who are being tasked or thinking about addressing these very questions as one begins to build an academic integration onto their campus. The question I want to ask you is, how are you a central party in how this plays out? And to that, are you even a member of the as Hamilton puts it, are you in the room for these types of conversations, or are you simply delivering the letter
room where it happened,
and letting others decide?
The room where it happened.
I would say that right around 2020 is when I started getting invited into the room formally. So that anytime any corner of the university was approached in an email or a consultation or a reach out with the word esports, it was forwarded to me from that point forward. So that didn't matter if it was a provost, a dean, a president, or a student. I was getting word of it, and I think that was the ultimate start of kind of the organizing the university outside of the silo that we had created in the program itself. And at that point, the strategy from the very beginning was to learn how the university talked. What was its dialect of English? If you've been in academia enough, we speak English, but the same way Americans versus British English is different too. But there's a different logic standard as well in regards to academia. So understanding those dialects and those different nuances to just link to communication was key. And it's defined oftentimes in handbooks, in policy documents, in updated press releases, and making sure that we were already speaking the university's languages before they came knocking. So I'm going to reference one specific partnership of showing how this is turning on its head now because of, one, patience, if you can afford that, but two, building the right relationships on campus. So our College of Business, often heralded as our most lucrative college on campus, is currently in the process of launching and revitalizing the entire sports business division. And thereafter, starting to really focus on developing more of the support infrastructure of potential hires and athletics directors at D1 universities. That's what they're going at. And so in that same concept, the narrative was, the question that I was able to pose, and that conversation was, is esports a component of the knowledge of a future AD for the US? And the answer was unanimously yes. So if that's the case, then that means that opens the door for me to start that renovation process of curriculum that they're already developing, not necessarily having to make esports degrees, but creating the traditional sports business pipeline that they're already doing and having selective courses along the way that have esports sensitivities. So by having that, it allows the energy to come to us, and it's more like, hey, we need students to do research on this, or we know that you have the right demographic. You already have our students in it because 3,500 students in a community, every college is represented. So that creates GA pathways now organically. That creates doctoral candidate potentials in the future pretty organically as well. And then the natural recruitment of a big university now has the additional value of incentivizing why you come to OU, because a large portion of potential future students play games of some sort. So all of that kind of organically came to a head in 2020 with obviously pandemic impacts, but the patience and then making sure that we're speaking the right language and building the right bridges, even if it's just a small conversation to plant that seed. It takes a year or two sometimes, depending on how high the hierarchy you go. But once you're there, I don't ever have to worry about what another portion of campus is doing now. It's immediately bringing us into consultation because we built the program to be collaborative, not just saying, well, if you're not going to help me now, I'm going to turn my back on you because you're not a supporter. Instead, I use that as a means of saying, if anyone would tell me no along this journey, you're freeing me from what you care, and I'm going to go do it anyway. Because you just relinquished your right to have influence over that topic. There's your responsibility to own it, and you fumbled that. So I'm going to continue to develop it, prove its worth, and then that's exactly what's come back full head and saying, okay, now we see the value. We didn't realize how big the magnitude is. Let's start talking about strategic intention and development.
Amazing. I love that. I want to bring this question to the two of you. I'm going to start with Doc, but one of the benefits of having two Division I directors in the panel is I want to ask, what is the case for the two of you and for yourselves that may not be necessarily the case for other programs or directors? In other words, what advantages or what problems within this topic of academics do you get to experience that others may not? And we can perhaps give some clarity or give some additional insight into how this conversation has evolved over the many different types of universities that are pursuing this.
Doc, how many students
Start
at
with
Boise?
you, Doc.
In what respect? Oh, how many total students at the university? 27,000.
And OU's at 31.
Yeah.
Start with that angle.
So they're large. They're large. Here's what I would say. For us specifically, there's an immediate demotivation to adding an academic offering to what we do, because every credit issuing organization within a college silo gets compared to every other credit bearing institution. Esports is never going to draw 400 people a semester. It would be unmanageable, right? And bringing in the expertise, to be able to do stuff like that, people wouldn't get the practical time that they would want to be able to produce and participate at the level that they want, whether that be coaching or social media or any of that. It has to be small. So when you offer, if you're at a big institution and you start offering credits, you're compared to the user experience, user interface program is, which is in my same college. And if we have 22 students and they have 35 students, they're going to compare our budgets, right? And they shouldn't be compared. So we avoid that kind of comparison straight away. And I think that that's unique to a program that is built internally and launched internally, versus a lot of our Division I programs that are coming online, Syracuse and others, who have seen the work that we're doing and gone, we can kick their butts. Let's do that, right? And that's great. That's great that they're building those out. But I would say unique to our organization, and I'll extend to Mr. Aguilar a little bit here too, that that because we're homegrown, we're going to face challenges that that bigger institutions at the Division I level that are adding a program after careful research and a populous, brochure about what they're going to build out, don't have.
Mike, I'd like to toss that back over to you. What is the case for you that may not be the case for others that sit within your particular vantage point?
So I think the biggest one, especially when we start talking outside of the sphere of D1, and yeah, there's plenty of big schools that aren't D1 that are D2, but that sheer number of student population automatically increases the potential of recruitment internally, which lowers the overhead of potential external recruitment and the resources needed to do those things. I'm long a proprietor, and I definitely have had feedback on this from plenty of peers. I don't care about national championships yet. I just don't. If my students do, I care just as much as they do, and I want to support them. But I care about the infrastructure more than not, because if I offer scholarships, then who is that head coach? I'm not going to give scholarships unless there's a compliance component to keep them accountable. It can't be me. I don't have enough time in the day for the program that we built that was designed to try and cater to every single gamer in a 31,000 student campus, including intramurals for the campus, including productions and collaborations during athletics, fan engagement, including the actual team developments. So when we talk about sliding that to the maximum and trying to take care of building a program that speaks to a lot of the same business processes that are already successful at OU, so we're not reinventing the wheel, we're just slapping a new piece of tire on it. And so in that same vein, that creates a plethora of resources and a big, massive pool of students that can execute. And then at that same point, that fundraising can go to, if I'm incentivizing a Valorant, team, and I'm paying 0.25% or 25% or 50% of their tuition cost, well, I would much rather take that money currently in 2023 and employ a cast of students that can put on events, because I can charge venue fees, which is a revenue generator, which I can do fan engagement, especially with us moving to the SEC. College football hopefully coming back as a video game next summer has a lot of strategic advantages to a specific, especially a Power 5 university branding and our moves. So those things are unique to the bigger campuses that do have that athletics brand power. And if you build those relationships into that monster of a brand extension of the university, which is definitely unique to the bigger schools. But the other is the intention of building infrastructure and supporting and impacting as many students as possible. Not to just say, hey, we're employing 30 students, but to say, no, you're going to own it. You're passionate about Smash. So Smash Weeklies on a Friday night, which happened organically as a student org for years. Well, now we're going to charge a venue fee because I just had 10 switches, full DLC, and a venue. You're going to charge a $5 venue fee. And that money is going purely into that student that's executing it, which now translates as resume generating as early as their freshman year in college. The same goes for production. If you're going to be putting on a production, and whether it's philanthropic, whether it's supporting another student organization, we've done live productions for the Asian American Student Association, other multicultural facilities, which is the same skill sets, and using it outside of that for interactive media and Twitch and YouTube Live and things like this. That's an opportunity to generate revenue, support student jobs, and build their portfolios and resumes. Our media and news side writes press releases for us with an OU logo. Imagine the second semester as a freshman writing a press release for a Power 5 Division I university. So like those things translate, and I can incentivize it by using that money more for the infrastructure development of supporting an entire ecosystem that looks very similar to an athletics Division I organization, where you have somebody that manages fan engagement, somebody who manages the production. For us, it's called Sooner Vision. For our extension of what equivalency would be a Learfield IMG, which manages marketing, sponsorships, external collaborations. From having the marketing students that are putting those things, we turn those into revenue generators. Then you support a workforce in a magnitude so that when you do finally come back full circle and say, I want to build teams that are going to win national championships, then I hire head coaches that have dedicated dorms, scholarship money, a salary, and no excuses to not be top 25 in at least 3 years. Otherwise, welcome to OU, and being part of a competitive energy, you're fired.
Fair enough. I want to move on real quick, and I'm going to pivot for a second. I would like to ask two of you, because there are people that are watching and will watch
There are
that
people that are watching.
are looking to be that are looking to begin offering some form of academic inclusion or discussion on their campuses. So I'd like to, and I think some of this has already been stated piecemeal throughout, but I would like for both of you to give some advice or considerations that you would share that a director may not know or otherwise assume. What advice
Doc,
do you have for others that are looking to get started in this particular direction?
I think as a starting point, you have to be very honest with yourself. This is still a first generational industry in the collegiate space. It's still very much first generational. And that's why none of us bear more than 50% resemblance from one university to the next. that compliance, that governance, that standard is getting closer and closer to having more similarity between us, but it's nowhere near, that 50% at best. Doc and my programs are an exact example of that. We are built completely different. A lot of intention similarly, the execution is very different. And would I say one is better than the other? Absolutely not, which is the second point I'll make. Whatever the strength is of the culture of the university and the climate and that region of the world that you represent, whatever speaks to you and becomes your potential pathway to get started is the right path. And so that's what's unique between every single one. So you can look at obviously references from panels like this. You can look at tapping on the shoulder of us directly or other directors that are well documented and well known and asking them for advice. But I guarantee you the one thing that you're going to walk away from that will leave you in a kind of a trance, and is that none of us did it the same. None of us started the same, at least still for the majority of us across the sector. So use that as a means. For me, that caused a lot of imposter syndrome. Am I doing the right thing in the very beginning? Am I the right person for this? That confidence level, was all over the place. But what the reality was is that you are afforded the opportunity and privilege of creating a pathway where a path didn't exist in the first place. And that is scary, daunting, and relentless. So there has to be that balance of that passion that gets you in the door, but you can't be pure passion. Passion will only sell the idea and concept from the very beginning. You need to wrap your head around the business process of a university to establish something that can be self-sustaining or revenue generating as fast as possible. Otherwise, you will have a university that says, well, they're doing esports, we want to get started. Let's throw some money in the bank. And they don't even know how to articulate what a good return on investment is, or a KPI, or whatever is of success. They think they know what it is, but they really don't. And it's up to you to help define that. But in that process, also make sure that you're managing it to a point that you have future trajectory past that next year, past that next 3, past that next 5. Definitely keep that 5-year to 10-year forward-thinking thought process at the core.
I love that, especially with the keep the forward-thinking process at the core. Doc, for you, I'd like for you to chime in and give your advice and insight to those that may be looking to start on this journey in regards to how we look at this academically. Share some of your eternal wisdom, my friend.
Eternal wisdom. Are you sure you want to go down this way? Because there's lots of other great stuff you could do. I mean, Uber right now. Seriously, if you left Uber and then you Lyft, and it's there's a whole lot of things you could do. Uber Eats. You have to be passionate about this, and you have to be prepared for it to be really hard. It's not easy. It sucks. When the directors that I know get together who've been in this for a few years, I think of Mike, I think of Dan, I think of Cody, even Hummel, right? When we get together, there's a fair amount of commiseration because everybody is fighting hard on their campus, and that is the thing that I think, Mike, you and I discovered first. We met at a PAX and have been friends ever since. It was sure, our schools compete, but we are not in competition, right? Unless it's together, because we have the same foes and same objectives. We're trying to win the time, attention, and secure some finances from our local community, right? We're trying to survive on our campus, and it's esports is always a local problem. So my advice is surround yourself with people who are doing the things that you're doing, and just share. Just share. You create a document for somebody else, share it out. Mark Deppy is the one who really got me situated in the right way at the very beginning. He just handed over all of his documents that he created, for talking about how their organization was going to be built, how it was going to fund itself, where money was going to come from, and it was a complete open book. And I'm eternally grateful to Mark for that, because I think he set up our entire collegial group to think that way, right? Instead of being, well, no, we'll do what we do, you do what you do. No, he was like, here's what we did, use it if you want, but if it doesn't have value. I really believe that we are dependent on each other for mutual success. And when we jumped in, Mike, you too, there were 30 total schools.
Yeah.
There were when we joined, there were 2 other Division I schools, Utah and Miami.
Right.
And there are over 180 today, including a bunch of Power Fives. And well, it depends on how it lands, group of five or sad group of five. We won't get into that. The group of four, who knows? But the idea that there are over 400 schools that offer some kind of financial support to their esports students now, that we will eclipse this year the 880 football programs at colleges, that there will be more officially recognized esports programs than football programs. That football's not going away, as we know, but it's magical to see. But that success is because we lean on each other. Sure, we get together, we want to beat the socks off each other, but we are first and foremost teammates in the battle against other people getting the time and attention that our students deserve. So work together. I mean, be ready for it to be hard, and for that reason, have other things in your life that you love to do. If you are fully dedicated to this for 12 hours a day, then your spouse will come to you and say, how long do you plan on living? As I've heard somebody had that conversation. Yeah, loose advice. Let's work together, help each other out, take care of yourself, and if you love this, dive in and make it yours. Yours doesn't have to look like either of ours or like anybody else's. Be the best thing your campus has ever seen, using the vocabulary of your campus. Mike talks that way because that's an important language. I'm here in Idaho. People still ride horses to school. We talk a little different, with not so much fancy mouth.
Yeah, I
Well, I'm in
appreciate
Oklahoma.
that candid advice. I just want to announce to those that are actively watching us right now on Twitch, we've got a couple minutes left here, and I want to encourage that if anyone has any questions for these two lovely gentlemen, please do drop them in the Twitch chat, and we can address them live on air. Just call what is it, 1-800-EsportsU, and drop your questions in the Twitch chat. But I want to, while the audience may or may not be dropping any questions that might serve as curveballs for the two of you, I want to ask, and starting with Mike, in regards specifically to the conversation surrounding academics within the scope of the program that you were building, what has been the easiest, and correspondingly, what has been the most difficult part of this journey so far? And do you anticipate, any further or future fights to be had?
The easiest component has been Doc and Mai's origination term, which is journalistic practicum. Selling the media components of this on that component of the university has been the easiest allies to build on campus. And so we have the second highest rated journalism school in the nation. So there's a lot of natural organic plugins with that, with our creative media production division, professional writing, and so forth. The second became business as we started to show the analytics, make sure that you're able to report on your communities, which Chris, you're strong on that as well. And understanding, obviously the report that you're a part of with Esports Foundry is critical for us to articulate our space more and more. Those analytics are a big portion of the equation. They can never be the entire equation because they always need context and narrative. But if that's our foundation, it is exponentially better now that exists than it did before that. And so those have been like the easy components. The harder components in the academic part are all those other degree alignments that we can see organically fit, and really kind of get them to buy in. And there's tons of opportunities. And now that I'm able to get into the rooms with deans and faculty much easier, these are becoming easier day by day and every time that we have these conversations. But the longest time, I could not let go of the idea of alignments with sociology, anthropology, social work. Especially for those, mainly because I used to work at a juvenile justice facility for 3 years. And so I see the opportunity of social work and gaming for inner city kids and at-risk youth. And so there was a big tie-in as an opportunity of using it as a means to keep kids on the corrective path or the right path from the get-go. And so instead of just going to social work, what we ended up doing after it was fruitless, we went to a 501c3 extension of the Oklahoma City Police Force called the OKC Police Athletic League, which major metropolitans across the U.S. all have one. and they launched an esports branch in 2020, and we just got to work in supporting it instead of that. Then we came back to social work and said, hey, your social work students have to be looking at shadowing public servants. They have to be looking at supporting, DHS type programs or things that can be either preemptive or reactionary for kids in those demographics or in those risk factors. And we already have that program built. We already have the organization that is plugged in and is absolutely public sector. And so at that point, we removed their ability to tell us no, because we had already done all their work for them. So that Trojan horsing of the university against itself has worked and has worked time and time again. But I have plenty of those ahead. College of Law is a big one for us, an opportunity. Again, all of those sciences, obviously the health sciences, as we have a big medical campus in OKC, when we start talking about everything basic in regards to things like this. So I think the medical stuff is going to be the hardest one for me to tackle. And then we're going to do the exact same thing with partnerships and working on creating analytics and telling the story and saying, we already produce all of the data that you need. Start funding the research in this. We've already done 50% of the equation. And on top of that, because we're so diverse in our student pool, I already have your students in the ranks. We just need you as the faculty to sign it off on it. So those kind of the easy components that have already happened, and some of the challenges that are ahead on the academic front.
Thank you. Doc, we have a question in the Twitch chat that I want to direct your way, and I want to frame it within the academic conversation still. While public and private universities are very different, what similarities in esports stand out to you between both types of programs that you've seen? So kind of a throwback to one of our original conversations, but can you give a little bit of what are the short and sweet differences between public and private that you're noticing right now?
The differences or the similarities?
Let's go with the they're asking for the similarities, so let's go with that.
Okay, yeah, similarities I think are just a better place. Honestly, we have a generation of academic leadership that recognizes the importance of serving students in new and different ways. And because of that, gaming and esports, which are two very different levels of looking at it, are vehicles for that. And I think that they together, when they're at their conventions and conferences, these things continue to come up. They see things. I'm sure they see, boxed solutions that people are trying to sell them for things like that. But they're inundated with it right now, and we all benefit from that increased attention, so that we can tell the story that we want to tell. I also know that it doesn't matter what type of institution you're at. There's never enough space to do all the things, even if there's a lot of open space, right? We all fight for space. The only way to capture that space is to use it, a little bit abuse it, make more noise than the neighbors are comfortable with, so that they want to get you in a place where you can do what you need to do and what the kids want to do without disrupting other people. Honestly, stretch the walls on the rooms that you're given, and champion the thing, the comments about we need a bigger space, we need this part of the building, or whatever, and that's how it happens. It takes years, and it takes a few complaints, but that's how we've been able to get where we're at, by getting kicked out of other places. Kind of been nice.
Thank you for that. We have one more question in the Twitch chat, and I will give an asterisk to this because I don't want to say that these are mandatory endorsements by any way, shape, or form, of course. But what conferences would you recommend getting involved in to learn more about the industry as it may pertain to academics? Are there any organizations, I should say, that are supportive of academic integration as a whole that you can lean on as a resource within this greater ecosystem at this time, or is there a gap to be filled there?
Here's what I'll say is that I haven't seen a ton in the collegiate academic peer-reviewed circle. I'm sure there are. I just have in the last 6 years, almost 7 now, I've been in this time warp called esports. I haven't been doing those events, but I see a ton of killer stuff at the regional tech teacher level stuff, right? ISTE. What's the one in Florida? FETC, right?
Mhm.
NECC is one of the Northwest one. I can guarantee you that Texas probably says they've got the biggest and best one that's ever been. Um, I've always found those to be amazing hubs of creativity and lots of examples of application, right? Um, so if you, as a college director, can find a way to go and participate in one of those, you will learn a ton just by being around folks like that. Garden State is a great example of what Chris Aviles has done up there. Chris was actually a student of mine like 9 years ago in our master's program. He did what he did on his own. He's a superstar. But that kind of stuff is a great opportunity to just learn new ways of doing things from people who are doing it and testing it. Does that answer your question,
Mike,
or did I
anything you'd like
dodge it
to?
again?
Yes, absolutely. No, you're totally fine. Mike, would you like
Okay.
to add anything else?
I think Doc nailed it with ISTE especially. I've seen so much good come out of those conferences and a lot of motivation. One thing that has humbled me and put me in my place unexpectedly, and I really appreciate it, is keeping your eyes on what K-12 does at the higher level. The K-12 industry in general, the feeder and pipeline of the organic nature into us, for whatever reason, feels 10 times more agile, and I love it because they're showing us what they can do when they just literally stick to the core of student excitement and wrapping STEM alignments and development pathways into it as a starting point, versus on the collegiate side, which often was founded based on a registered student organization or something that inspired further elevation. Whereas in K-12, it's predominantly and heavily staff and teacher led from the very beginning, meaning that it's wanting to have structure from day one versus, hey, I have a bunch of friends, we like playing Smash, let's create an registered student org. So I do draw a lot of inspiration from K-12 and just watching the different state conferences and things and what they're doing, how they operate, the decisions that they're making, and why. Um, in fact, they actually helped me kind of break my head about which titles we'd support in varsity, because they did a state championship in WWE in Oklahoma. And I absolutely laughed at it at first, saying, this is ridiculous. I love this, but it's ridiculous. But then I went to the state championship and they had rented out an entire boxing ring, put the consoles in the middle of that ring, and had their grand championships right there, which to me would have
Let's
been the
go.
coolest experience as a high school senior. And then at that point, I said, you know what? You're right. Why do I care about which titles we develop? If students want to develop it, at least at this current stage of our development at OU, well, what's stopping me from having varsity and Splatoon? Nothing. Are they hitting the measures? Are their grades good? Are their community? Are they doing productions? Are they doing fundraising? Are they marketing? How is that any different than Valorant?
Can we beat
Because if I'm
Boise State in that? If the answers are yes to those things, then you're in.
right, that's pretty much it. That's not. I beat Boise for a lifetime of insult. No, I'm just kidding. But like those types of things inspire
Hasn't been
and
that long
allow.
yet.
No, but those things inspire me to be free flowing versus oftentimes the pressure of the closing walls per se of a university that's built on generations of compliance, legal processes that have ratified policies because of changes or some misconduct scenario or something as bad as injury and things like that. And so those things, K-12 often still inspires me today, and it helps me remember what we're doing. One is the mission of an academic and an education, but also the fact that somebody sat us down on a couch at one point in our life, played Mario Kart with us, whooped us, and it inspired the desire to do better and do more inside of the game.
Thank you for that, both of you. I'm going to tee up your final question as we wrap up this panel. I want to ask you both, as we have gone on this journey a little bit, learning a little bit more about academic integration and a few of the things that we've discussed today, I'd like to ask both of you, do you have an end game in your heads right now for your respective institutions of what academics looks like at your school? And I'm going to ask you to do it in 60 seconds. I'm going to start
I
with
thought you were
you,
going to
Mr.
ask to
Haskell.
do it in a haiku, and I was going to say that'll take me a little longer. Let me say this. My end game is to have communications, to have sports management, to have um, one of our data analytics programs and to have cybersecurity all create co-curricular activities that impact or that use our platform for that purpose. That is my hope. Those four seem to be on the horizon for me. That's a relative end game. But remember, I'm really old, Chris. So I'm only going to be doing this for like 13, 14 more years max.
Oh. Did Chris freeze?
I think Chris was so
All right,
taken back by that. Mike, you
it's now
take it
the
away.
Moog and Doc. It's now the Moog and Doc show. All right, taking over.
Let's go.
I guess my 60-second elevator on this one is that I just want whatever I build to stand the test of time, meaning that whoever's in this seat, not just me, but whoever's in this seat after me, they get hit by a bus, walk away from the building, whatever, that this stands on its own 2 feet, which is true legacy, true power of building something that's generational in the world of dreaming of a world where 8-year-old version of me already had all these pipelines. The degree paths and those types of things organically will come and go as we find new ways to leverage technology in and out of everyday operational things. I mean, look at the applications of augmented reality and virtual reality and medical fields and things like this, and the blending of it, even AR and VR and athletics training and that stuff. So I would much rather be, I'll quote one of my favorite quotes with Bruce Lee, be like water. Water comes a cup, it becomes the cup. Water smashes, it can crash, it can be soft. The point is fluidity, and allow gaming to be the point that there is no PC master race. It's consoles and PCs are equals. Card games and FPSs are equal. MOBA and gacha are equal. They all have a welcome place in this. And through that, we can inspire students to be the biggest and best versions of whatever they choose to become.
Unreal. The Bruce Lee finish. Chris, we're glad you recovered from that mini stroke that you had there. And no, but truly, to both of you, amazing friends, Chris, Mike, I love you. Grateful for any time, even virtually, I get to spend with you.
I appreciate the two of you. And I will extend an invitation to all of those who are watching. We will have a power hour, so to speak, a happy hour at 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time after the conclusion of our upcoming panel, which will be discussing the CECC 23-24 competitive season. Very excited to join some of the very best and brightest from EsportsU to talk about what is upcoming for both the fall and the spring. So please hang around for that and join us in Discord to continue the conversation later on this evening. Thank you all so much. Doc, Mike, I appreciate both of you as always. Thank you for sharing your insight. I look forward to seeing both of you in the CECC throughout the fall and spring semesters. Good luck to both of you.
Salute.